There hasn't been a boring day in Marvel land since we started being blessed by their movies over a decade ago. But no one could have seen that Morbius broke the mold for post-credit scenes. Have you heard the theory that may connect Moon Knight and Doctor Strange 2, and Marvel removes Rachel McAdams from new Doctor Strange 2 trailer? All this and more in this video. So let's start with how Morbius post-credits made Marvel history. The situation between Sony's Spider-Man universe and Marvel's Cinematic Universe, and what exactly is canon, has been capricious for a while. There's a considerable lack of world building between the credits of Morbius and all that came before it, and the post-credits are arguably the most significant we've seen so far, especially when it's connected to the SSU. Ever since Marvel movies started rolling the two post-credit scenes back in 2012, the message was always one of world building and one of some comic relief. But here comes Morbius, blatantly breaking the mold. Warning, the following may contain spoilers if you're not up to date on all Marvel movies. In short, the two scenes show us Adrian Toomes, aka Vulture, with Michael Keaton reprising his role. In the first scene, we see him transported into the SSU from prison, his last known location in Spider-Man Homecoming. He doesn't seem to bother about being transported to an entirely different universe, and then the unthinkable happens. The second scene is a direct follow-up, something that has never happened before in any post-credit scenes. In the scene, Vulture meets up with Michael Morbius to discuss a team-up to go after Spider-Man. And that's not all. Morbius is also the first non-MCU movie that has two post-credit scenes. But none of this actually helps the SSU. It feels like they wanted fans to believe they had just watched an MCU movie to save it from itself, but we don't think it worked. Next up, Moon Knight theory reveals shocking Doctor Strange 2 connection. With what we're used to of Marvel movies when it comes to delicious little Easter eggs, we've been grossly disappointed with how insular Moon Knight has been so far. But there may be more there than we realized after all, if we are to believe this wild theory that could connect the two stories irrevocably. So let's break it down. When the first trailer of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was released, fans were quick to point out the building where Stephen Strange, shackled and all, is supposedly brought to meet the Illuminati. Doesn't look quite as futuristic if you've been in the British Museum in London. They look so much alike, we can be fairly certain it was indeed recorded in the British Museum. What of it, you might think? Well, the premise of Moon Knight is that Stephen Grant, played by Oscar Isaac, is a museum gift shop employee. That is, until he realized he's one of multiple split personalities. They never spell out which museum, but you guessed it, it looks an awful lot like the British Museum. Whether Moon Knight is actually shot at the British Museum is not certain. Some say the building in the trailer is the Museum of Fine Arts in Budapest. Still, Moon Knight seems to be implying its protagonist works at the same museum where a very important scene of Doctor Strange was filmed. Maybe it's a coincidence, but we're not convinced that's the case. What say you? And now, is Daredevil in the MCU? This is starting to become a true mystery, with information appearing only to disappear again. Is it really too much to ask to get some clarity on whether the Matt Murdock that appears in Spider-Man No Way Home, who is portrayed by Charlie Cox, is also the one we know and love as Daredevil? But to this day, no one has been willing to truly confirm or deny that Daredevil and the other Netflix series exist within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. To add to the mass confusion, Wilson Fisk in Hawkeye was a real cherry on top as well. But it looked like Marvel Studios had finally made a decision on Daredevil's fate. In the first weekend of April, Marvel.com updated the on-screen full report section of Matt Murdock's character page without any apparent reason except maybe releasing fans of this unasked for mystery. Suddenly, there was a blurb about his appearance in No Way Home. The outline holds a detailed report of Murdock's adventures in both Daredevil and the Defenders. The No Way Home part seemed to imply his appearance takes place sometime after Daredevil Season 3 finale. Naturally, fans saw this as a confirmation that they are indeed one and the same Daredevil, which in turn means that the Kingpin played by Vincent D'Onofrio in Hawkeye is the same. But the entry has since been removed. No explanation given, and if possible, there is now even more confusion. Maybe they don't know either. Hold up, there's still more Marvel news to cover. A Marvel director has admitted that the MCU might not be as carefully planned out as we thought it was, and where did Rachel McAdams go in the new Doctor Strange trailer? Next up in this video. But first, Morbius director reacts to awful reviews. We were all rooting for Morbius. We had such high hopes, but now it's here. We're all feeling rather deflated. Many left the cinemas disappointed, unsatisfied. Some even descended into anger that Marvel allowed itself to be associated with such a letdown of a movie. For what we are used to, know, when it comes to anything Marvel, Morbius showed a shocking lack of impressive visual effects, and for some reason the movie felt unnaturally outdated. With Morbius being so badly received, there was no way the director, Daniel Espinosa, wouldn't hear the negative comments. As of this moment, the movie has a sad 16% critic approval score on Rotten Tomato. So how does Espinosa feel about that? After all, the work he must have put into this project? The director opened up about what it's like to make something that is so public that pretty much everyone has an opinion on it, whether that is positive or negative. But with him having a lot of self-hatred, he'll be the first to notice the bad. Despite that, Espinosa always tried to focus on something good. He tries not to focus too much on the too harsh critics, and there are parts of all his movies that he truly loves. Negative feedback is useful, critical for anyone, but there is a limit where it becomes destructive, and no one needs that. The audience score is a solid 70%, but even with that, Morbius got the second lowest cinema score that any Marvel movie ever got. And now, Marvel director admits MCU doesn't have a plan. Over the last 14 years, MCU has hit home runs time and again. Unheard of blockbuster action, consistent, amazing quality, and an interconnected storytelling on a scale that no one could even dream of before Marvel put it on the screen. And in the last decade, across the Infinity Saga, Marvel Studios has introduced us to heroes and villains, all building up to such an epic conclusion that got us so utterly invested it went on to become the biggest movie of all time. While we know we have many creative geniuses to thank, there has always been one man at the helm of all this, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige. He has been involved in every movie and series from the MCU, and he's the one with the veto vote on all decisions that make or break this beautiful world they've built. And we blindly believed he must have a master plan. Supposedly the next decade of Marvel stories has already planned out, but as it turns out, things may not be so set in stone as we thought. During a sit-down at the Sands International Film Festival, Avengers Endgame co-director Joe Russo told Deadline about the studio's lack of planning. There's an idea, but you can't have a plan if the movie tanks. This appears to be where Feige's genius truly lies, the retrofitting of ideas, which makes sense, and making the biggest decisions only later seems to be the magic sauce that makes Marvel movies so delicious. Finally, Marvel removes Rachel McAdams from new Doctor Strange 2 trailer. There have been several ups and downs in the story of whether the lovely Rachel McAdams, who plays Christine Palmer, would find herself returning for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Early reports said McAdams was a no-show for the sequel, but then the confirmation came that she was indeed to return as Stephen Strange's former love interest in a more active role. Palmer's storyline sure got her interest piqued, with her having been spotted in the Illuminati facility that was holding Strange and America Chavez prisoner. It even seemed like Palmer was actually working for the Illuminati, and with the first trailer for Multiverse of Madness, it seemed set in stone that McAdams would continue her adventure. Except she has completely disappeared from the new promotional trailer. When looking at the same shot, Palmer is conspicuously missing from Strange's side. Marvel Studios has played games like this before, tricking the audience with trailers or even completely changing its mind mid-production. But with Palmer having been completely removed from the group shot, which is now a couple shot, the status of her character has never been more precarious. But as we said, for all we know, it's a way for the studio to get us scratching our head. Or did they really think we wouldn't notice that she was missing? We'll have to wait until May 4th when Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out to find out what happened to Christine Palmer. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching.